At number 10, we have Hercules from the X-Men. This was a smaller blip on her radar, thus it's number 10. But in the Korvac saga in 1978, they are briefly a couple. Thankfully, their relationship doesn't make anything awkward once they break up, and they still work together for some time. Apparently, even in a 2010 issue, she is still saying things like, "He's hot, maybe something will happen again." She does have quite a few people who are kind of on again, off again, so who knows, Hercules, you still might get your moment. At number 9, we have Bucky Barnes. In the Civil War comic book storyline, it's explained that during the Soviet Union days, Natasha and Bucky were actually together. They were both in training and becoming operatives, and while spending that much time training and having to be strict and all that adrenaline, I mean, something's bound to happen. Later on, around the time when Bucky becomes Captain America, after the Cap is presumed dead, Stark tells Bucky that the Cap wanted his mantle to be continued, and of course Bucky seems like a natural choice. They end up actually dating again. But again, with her, it's on again off, and things end up ending. At number 8, we have Daredevil, or Matt Murdock. They worked together for a while. She helped him take out the Owl in Daredevil issue number 81. After that, he even ends his relationship with Karen Page to be with her. They fall in love. Then they get a fresh start, and they decide to move to San Francisco to go fight crime together there. However, things go south with their relationship when she starts to feel like he thinks he's better than her, like he's better at the whole vigilante thing than she is, and he doesn't really appreciate her skills. She's not his equal, and that just really sours things, doesn't work for her. So she leaves and goes to work with the X-Men. Enter Hercules. Maybe that's why it was like just a short kind of blip, because that was her rebound. See, it's all making sense when you put it all together. At number 7, we have Von Doom. Okay, it's an alternate universe. It's a mini-series created by Neil Gaiman. I love him. It's set in 1602. That's right, the Elizabethan era is where our heroes and villains are now roles of, the New World and the English court. Natasha is a secret agent that is working for the Queen through Sir Nicholas Fury, and she is the most dangerous woman in Europe. In issue 2, she's helping Matt Murdock to protect the Knights Templar's treasure, but she double crosses him. It turns out that she is secret lovers with Count Otto von Doom. He is this evil tyrant ruling over this area and just being an asshole, basically. I mean, he doesn't really sound like a catch to me. I'm gonna prove my point later on. Later on, she is the captain of his flying ship, and she questions his plan to go to the edge of the world, which I think seems reasonable, and he just pushes her over the edge. Just done. Dead. Tough love. At number 6, we have Alexei Shostakov, also known as Red Guardian. So Alexei is an amazing test pilot back in the Soviet Union. The KGB orchestrates him marrying a famous ballerina, Natasha Romanova, and the KGB decides they want her to join them as a secret agent. So they fake her husband's death to help sort of push her into the Red Room program, and then she decides to become a spy to honor her late husband's death.
Starting us off in at number 10, Carol Danvers. No one really wanted Peter Parker and Carol Danvers to be a thing, but that's still what we got. And in Miss Marvel Volume 2, issue 34, Peter asks Carol out, which she said yes to since he had helped her when she was depowered. Tad forceful of him. Then in issue 47 of her solo series, the two of them actually went out on a date at an upscale restaurant, and it is pretty painful to watch, until the date is interrupted by supervillains, thank god. The pair take them out, then end up eating chili dogs on a roof that overlooks a city. Later, it would continue to get weird between the two of them when they teamed up to fight Mac Gargan's Venom. But quite frankly, we're really glad this relationship never really hit the ground running. It's definitely one we can do without. In at number 9, Rogue. In the world of X-Men Forever, which takes place on Earth 161, we got to see a romance blossom between Spider-Man and Rogue. This Rogue had absorbed Nightcrawler's powers, which also changed her to look a lot more like him physically, which did not bode well with her. After that went down, she found herself crossing paths with Spider-Man after dealing with a robbery in New York. Feeling a little lost, she decided to spend the night with him, accompanying him on his patrol, which led to sparks between the two. They actually almost kissed, and would've if it wasn't for being interrupted by the screams of a nearby Jean Grey. Up next, number 8, Spider-Gwen. Okay, so I know we said we wouldn't be talking about alternates of Gwen Stacy with Peter Parker, but this alternate of Gwen had her sights set on a different man in the Spider-Man mantle. We're talking Miles Morales. Spider-Gwen is the Gwen Stacy aka Spider-Woman of Earth 65. Now under the Marvel Now line, she and Miles would get romantically involved with one another. And side note, their Earth 8 alternates even got married. They starred in a story titled Sitting in a Tree, in which their two titles crossed glossed over and made for a story that had our hearts pitter-pattering all the way through. I mean, how could you not ship them? They're so cute together. I mean, unless you're actually one of those people who shipped Miles and Kamala Khan, in which case I am very sorry for your loss. And at 7, CARLI Cooper. CARLI Cooper is another exception on our list. She first appeared in the 2008 Amazing Spider-Man issue 545. She's a forensic specialist who ended up dating Peter after he and MJ broke up after the One More Day story event. Now the two of them had a bit of a slow burn flirtation before they finally went out on a date together. Eventually though, she would figure out that Peter was Spider-Man, and growing tired of his lies to her, she broke up with him. While she wasn't a superhero when they were dating, she would eventually become a villain briefly, operating under the name of Monster, gaining powers from the Goblin formula that gave her superhuman strength, speed, and stamina. Up next, number 6, Betty Brant. Betty Brant is a civilian character that Peter has dated in the past. She first appeared in the Amazing Spider-Man issue 4 in 1963, dated Peter briefly, but then would go on to date Flash Thompson. But once upon a time, in What If Volume 1 issue 17, she was actually a superhero, appearing in the story What If the Radioactive Spider Had Bitten Someone Else. Now, as you can imagine, in this hypothetical tale, Peter was not bitten by the radioactive spider, but Betty was, giving her his powers. She confides in the civilian Peter, and he begins to assist her, essentially acting as a sidekick of sorts to her Spider-Woman, or rather, the Amazing Spider-Girl as she preferred to be called. And at one point she fails to stop a criminal from escaping, which leads to the death of Peter's Uncle Ben. Now because of this, she gives up fighting crime altogether, but Peter still goes on to become Spider-Man, with synthetic powers of course.
Number 10, Hulk. So, here's the scoop. I did not want to talk about what happened in the Old Man Logan storyline, but I got too many requests for it on my last video to not mention it. So, here we go. You're welcome, I guess, / sorry for those of you that don't want to hear about this. In the Old Man Logan universe, Earth 807128 to be specific, it turns out that Hulk ends up going crazy from the gamma radiation, eventually having his mind kind of warped. This, combined with the fact that She-Hulk, his cousin, Jennifer Walters, is the only one left on Earth that he finds himself biologically compatible with, means that he ends up mating with her. We don't know if She-Hulk was into it or not. All we see is their inbred offspring and their offspring's offspring, and the fact that Bruce has become villainous as his mind has deteriorated. This isn't the first time these first cousins have been weirdly shipped though. Hulk ended up going wild with lust in the Incredible Hulk Annual 2000 and almost accidentally mated with his cousin while in a horny rage. Ugh. So there you go, now you heard about it. Number 9, Zapper. Dr. Daniel Ridge Jr. was one of She-Hulk's first boyfriends. Despite the fact that they never saw it all the way through, he remained kind of weirdly obsessed with Jennifer, even after they broke up. The woman he married, Christine, even ended up altering her appearance to look more like Jennifer, just to get his attention. Zapper ended up being called in to help Jennifer after exposure to Warzone's toxins affected her and made her kinda weak. When she momentarily died, Zap was there to resurrect her and ended up kissing her in front of his wife. Ooh. Christine actually blamed Jennifer, thinking that She-Hulk was trying to seduce Zapper. The whole thing was kinda like a soap opera. She-Hulk actually thought that Zapper was behind Warzone and had engineered the enemy solely for the purpose of She-Hulk needing to be healed by Daniel, allowing him to win her back. When it turned out this wasn't true and Christine's dad was actually behind the attack, She-Hulk became even more enraged until her own father showed up and kinda calmed her down. In the end, Zapper and his wife ended up seeking marriage counseling to help resolve their issues surrounding Jennifer. You know you're crazy obsessed with someone when you marry someone who looks pretty much just like them. Number 8, Pug. He's so cute. Augustus Pugliese is a fellow co-worker of Jennifer Walters. He works as a lawyer for Goodman, Lieber, Kurtzberg, and Holloway, the same firm that Walters also works for. Pug is one of She-Hulk's good friends, and ended up being there for her after she began questioning her feelings surrounding being herself versus She-Hulk, and her potential addiction to her superpowered state. Pug stayed over and helped her make a list surrounding the pros and cons between herself and her superpowered state, She-Hulk. Pug used to have very strong romantic feelings for Jen, and wanted to confess them to her when they were working to help Spider-Man in his case against J. Jonah Jameson. After she ended up with Man-Wolf though, Pug thought there was really no point in loving Jen and pining after her, and ended up taking a potion to cure him of what he felt were unrequited feelings. As such, the two are now simply really great friends. Shame that this couple did not get more of a chance, though the Earth A version of Pug of Earth 721 did get more of a chance as he ended up marrying that version of Jennifer Walters. Yay, in an alternate reality anything is possible. Number 7, StarFox. Okay, so while Eros, especially in the older comics, can come off as kind of a super creepy dude due to his pleasure granting and emotional manipulation powers, he and She-Hulk as a pairing both seem to genuinely
have a good time. She-Hulk and Janet Van Dyne revisit the one night the pair had together in She-Hulk Volume 2 Issue 7. As much as I find the idea of these two hooking up kind of cringeworthy, Jennifer seemed to remember the night fondly as one where she had a lot of fun with Eros, and the amount of enjoyment that StarFox's prowess, abilities, and skills appeared to have given She-Hulk is why he's ranked at number 7. I mean, we can't really rank him much higher, as despite Jen having a good time when it came to their physical exploits, he still kind of manipulated her and John Jameson into having feelings for one another to the extent that they later got married, despite issues that would have normally destroyed most relationships. Like, you know, Jameson not wanting Jennifer to be in her She-Hulk state. Not cool, Man-Wolf, and very not cool, StarFox. Number 6. MIKA. She-Hulk met MIKA at a fashion show of Janet Van Dyne's. MIKA is a Swedish underwear model and made the top 10 of People magazine's sexiest men alive. He ended up escorting She-Hulk back to the Avengers mansion, and the two had a fling. We see them in bed together again a few days later, but MIKA ends up breaking up with She-Hulk because he says he is looking for someone with more depth. It seems She-Hulk's fear of being perceived as boring as Jennifer Walters actually prevented her from really creating a relationship with MIKA. She's a little too free-loving for the model, I guess. This revelation leaves She-Hulk confused, as you know, I mean, MIKA's an underwear model, so what is depth for him? I don't know. Underwear models can be deep too, though, I guess.
At number 5, we have Hawkeye. Part of why they left Europe was because the KGB tried to kill her. That's really when Hawkeye decides enough's enough and he wanted to get out of the villain game, and they continue to work together, but now for the Avengers in the US. When they were first here, that's when they started dating for a while. He even proposed to her. She debated it. He almost died. She questioned life without him, but in the end she decided not to go ahead with it, and they broke up and did solo careers for a while. You see it a bit in the movies, like there's a bit of tenderness between them in the first one. In the comics it's sort of an on again, off again kind of thing. Kind of like Diana Troy and Riker in TNG, it's like when it works they're together, when it doesn't they're not. I think what brought them together so many times is that feeling of understanding. Neither of them really have superpowers, they're just super well trained. They were both criminals that moved to the good side. They were both looking to take down Iron Man in the beginning. They both have tragic backstories. A lot of it just fits together and makes them an obvious choice to kind of be together. At number 4, we have Michael Corcoran. This is a way back playback. This is an issue when Black Widow goes undercover as a defective American scientist named Laura Mathers to try to find out where they're keeping Ivan Petrovich. She works at his lab and learns about their goals, overhears conversations with his Soviet superiors, becomes romantic with him. She thinks she has it all figured out and now she's gonna go get him out of this area, and then it turns out it's actually a trap for her. However, now that Michael's usefulness is at an end, the KGB agent comes and stabs him in the back, and then he dies in Black Widow's arms where he confesses that he really did love her. My heart. That's so sad. At 3, we have the Hulk. We only really get to see this in the second movie, and really only a little bit. She's super scared of him in the first one, but then in the second one they seem to sort of share a connection. It seems like neither of them have really ever had a normal life, and I think that sort of brought them together. We were expecting a bit more after Age of Ultron, I have to say. However, with the Hulk flying into space, meeting up with Thor and Ragnarok, their love didn't really have time to bloom, and then trying to string all these different movies and heroes together in Endgame, there just really wasn't time, unless they made a 4-hour movie, which quite frankly I would be about. I would actually watch that, but there just wasn't time. Apparently they even shot some scenes of their romance and whatnot, but they had to cut it because the film was just so long. At number 2, we have Spider-Man. There was a time when Hydra attempted to take over S.H.I.E.L.D. During this time, Natasha was tortured until she was completely switched over to her cover identity, which at this time was Nancy Rushman, a school teacher. So she's walking around New York City and gets mugged, as you do. Spider-Man jumps in to save her right as she just like karate chops this criminal, so that's kind of cool. He remembers her and he wants to help her get her memory back. Naturally, she thinks he's very sweet, and then she actually ends up falling for him, and then he's super torn because, you know, Black Widow likes him and she's super hot, but, you know, he should help her get her memory back. So, of course, because he's a really good guy, he helps her get her memory back. When she comes to or becomes herself again, she realizes that, you know, I'm not really digging you anymore, and then gets out of there basically. basically. And at number 1 we have Iron Man. I know, no one is safe from her feminine wiles. In the Ultimate Marvel universe, she is much closer to him than in other comic books or movies. They date, they even get engaged. However, it turns out that she is a traitor and was just manipulating the Avengers to destroy them for payback for the fall of the Soviet Union. It all ends with Hawkeye, of all people, killing her, and then, it's about to get Kardashian in here, after she is killed, there is a sex tape that is leaked of her and Iron Man, so she does damage to Iron Man's reputation even from the grave. Some dark business there.
Moving on to number 5, Marrow. Mutant Marrow and Spider-Man had a brief entanglement after Marrow was brainwashed to be a sleeper agent for S.H.I.E.L.D. Operating under the alias Sarah Rushman, which, fun fact, was a previous alias of Black Widow's, she had a bit of a split personality, in which Marrow would terminate life model decoys, and then Sarah was a college kid at Empire State University. That's where she developed a crush on Peter, who was lecturing there, and the two ended up going out on a few dates before he realized who she truly was. Eventually that would dissipate, with Parker helping her break free from S.H.I.E.L.D.'s control by faking her own suicide in a Spider-Man Marrow one-shot crossover from 2001. Up next at 4, Silk. Silk, aka Cindy Moon, first hit the scene in The Amazing Spider-Man issue 1 volume 3. The character was bitten by the same radioactive spider as Peter was, but from there on out suffered a different kind of tragic origin story than what Parker had endured. She was kidnapped and forced to train inside of a bunker, where she was held captive by a mysterious man named Ezekiel in an attempt to hide her from Morlun, who was killing off spider-powered peeps. Eventually Peter learned of her existence, and when she was free, the two couldn't help but notice that they were super attracted to one another. Unnaturally so. It was intense. Turns out it was actually a product of their pheromones, with the two of them overcome by primal urges to jump each other's bones. They eventually had to part ways because these urges were just too strong and too overwhelming, hindering their efforts to fight crime and just exist. Cindy would go on to begin her own costume superhero career separate of Peter. In at number 3, Kitty Pryde. Peter's relationship with Kitty Pryde isn't one that took place in the 616 universe, but rather on Earth 1610 in the Ultimate universe. During Ultimate Comics Spider-Man, Kitty develops a crush on Peter when Spider-Man and the X-Men team up in Queens to take down the Latverian mutant Geldof. After being charmed by the web-slinger, Kitty asked him out on a date. Over the course of their relationship, they would work together to take on villains, and eventually Peter started to feel some tension about the fact that Kitty's X-Men persona was way more public versus the secret identity that he had been striving to maintain. Eventually though, the two break up, which did not go smoothly. But luckily over time they made amends, with them even becoming good friends after the fact. And at number 2, Silver Sable. A sometimes antagonist, sometimes ally of Spider-Man's, Silver Sable, who was introduced in 1985's The Amazing Spider-Man issue 265, has never hooked up romantically with Peter in the 616, but there's certainly been lots of tension and flirtation to say the least. But we did get to see a glimpse of what that underlying sexual tension could amount to in What If Volume 2 issue 21, which was titled What If Spider-Man Had Married the Black Cat. Now in this story, Black Cat is accidentally murdered by Paladin, and Spider-Man ends up getting romantically involved with Silver Sable in the aftermath. They both bond over the grief they share of their dead loved ones. By the end, it is a bit ambiguous as to whether or not their relationship worked out in the long run. And last but not least, speaking of, we have Black Cat at number 1. Black Cat, aka Felicia Hardy, may have originally been a villain of Spider-Man's, now an anti-hero, but if anything, her criminality made the romantic relationship between her and Peter Parker that much more steamier. Created by Marv Wolfman and Keith Pollard in The Amazing Spider-Man issue 194, Felicia actually chose to become more of an anti-hero because of her relationship with Spider-Man, even becoming his partner for a while. Although she didn't care much for Peter Parker the civilian, she was way more into Spider-Man the vigilante, and one of the reasons why the two would split up was because of this. Now they've had an on-again, off-again relationship over the years, with Black Cat working as one of Spidey's biggest allies at their best, and her slipping back into the life of a criminal when they've been at their worst. Although that relationship between the two of them may have been tipped permanently into negative land, thanks to Otto Octavius running around in Peter's body as the superior Spider-Man, having broken Black Cat's teeth and abandoned her for the police to pick up. Definitely something that would make someone not want to be into you. Just saying.
Number 5, Tony Stark. Tony Stark ends up seducing She-Hulk on the helicarrier during a debrief in regards to the Hulkbuster team that she is a part of. The debrief appears to occur over a candlelit dinner, and the two end up in bed together. Being a couple of the most well-known players in the Marvelverse, She-Hulk ends up pondering as they lay in bed about the way women versus men are perceived when it comes to playing the field. Tony is about to offer insight on the topic when their conversation is interrupted by the helicarrier being attacked. Not something that is good news for She-Hulk, She-Hulk, as apparently she's known as the Helicarrier Destroyer, because she was on it before when it was destroyed, so. But maybe for the best, as in She-Hulk Volume 1, Tony seems to express concern over She-Hulk's frequent overnight guests during her stay at the Avengers mansion, fearing that they pose a risk to the security of the mansion. So his thoughts on She-Hulk's free-loving romantic life, they might not be so kind after all. Come on, Tony, don't criticize She-Hulk. You have the same problem. If anyone's creating security risks, it's also probably you. Number 4, WYATT Wingfoot. One of my most favorite romantic interests of She-Hulk. WYATT and She-Hulk first met during her time with the Fantastic Four, where she was standing in for the Thing after he opted to stay a little longer on Battleworld to reflect on himself and do some soul searching after being depowered. WYATT and She-Hulk would instantly hit it off and end up dating on and off again throughout most of her time in the comics, including WYATT even joining her on Avengers. I really love the pair of them together because Wingfoot, or Wheezy as Jen affectionately calls him, has always respected whatever Jen wants to do. He stands by her to support her, but he never seems to try and control her. Instead, he's just there when she needs him. And as Jen has her own things going on and is a strong, independent woman, lawyer, and hero, he also has his own life as well, which sometimes takes him away from her. He ends up as the chief of the fictional Native American Kiwazi tribe of Oklahoma, and as such has his own responsibilities that he also often has to attend to. Number 3, Hercules. Okay, so although WYATT may be sweeter, Hercules is someone that She-Hulk has fantasized about for issues and issues of comic books. Finally, the two ended up together in more than just a fantasy when She-Hulk was bailed out of prison in order to help Hercules in a fight and prevent him from, causing so much damage, as he sometimes likened to do. The two worked together to take down the Celtic god Bendigeidfran. I don't know if I'm saying that right, even though I have an Irish heritage, so I should really be saying it right. Who is also referred to as the Blessed Crow, who was using Bran Murphy as an avatar in his fight against Hercules. She-Hulk and Hercules successfully defeated the giant avatar and ended up later hooking up. Finally! After years of fantasizing. Though before this happened, they actually almost hooked up during the sensational She-Hulk run. That time, however, She-Hulk refused Hercules' advances, labeling him a muscle-bound moron, and not understanding whatever it was that she saw in him before. He liked her spirit though, insisting still that they spend the night, and smacked her on the butt, prompting She-Hulk to send him crashing through a wall with a single punch. Well, I guess she ended up changing her mind about that. Even if he is a muscle-bound moron, he's still a pretty hot guy, I guess. That Hercules. Can't say no to a demigod. Number 2, Luke Cage. So these two have some of the best comic book chemistry I have ever seen. Both are stubborn and yearn to prove a point to the other, but are also kind enough to listen and learn from each other. She-Hulk sees Luke as a criminal until she agrees to go out on a date with him, where she learns about his past and his misdeeds, but also how he was kind of wrongly convicted. As a lawyer, she truly believed in the law until she learned about Luke Cage's plight. In this way, he made Jennifer a better person, and together the two made an impossibly strong team, both intellectually and physically. Speaking of physically, Luke has also attested that he would be resilient enough to actually handle a physical relationship with She-Hulk, allowing her to not have to worry about smashing her partner, well, smashing with her partner. Number 1, Juggernaut. She-Hulk slept with Juggernaut after getting to know him as his defense lawyer. The two seemed to bond over sports and Juggernaut's opinion on women's rights. Kane Marco's thoughts on the subject seem to be that women are sometimes just a heck of a lot better than men. A fair conclusion to come to after spending the night with She-Hulk, I'd think. She-Hulk would later deny that this ever happened though, whenever another character in the comics brought it up. It was later revealed that apparently it was not the main continuity She-Hulk of Earth 616 at all who had slept with Juggernaut, but the Jennifer Walters of Earth 721, aka Earth A, who had temporarily given herself the Earth 616's powers before escaping to this reality. However, in She-Hulk Volume 2, Issue 25, it would appear that She-Hulk breaks the fourth wall with Kane Marco to renounce her guilt for their one-night stand and admits her true feelings for him, upset that the writers have been forcing her to appear ashamed of their time together. So I don't know if that was also Earth A She-Hulk or what's happening there.